Hello, everyone. Welcome to Say It.
Hey everyone, so happy you are here with us today. I am Mike.
And I am Sarah.
Really glad you are here with us today.
Mike, how has your week been?
Honestly, a good week. I finally finished a book I had been reading for 3 months.
3 months for one book?
It was a very long book, but a good one. How about you?
My week was fine, but something happened that genuinely made me laugh out loud.
Tell me.
A friend sent me a message after she watched a film. She wrote, "I was so boring at that film."
She said she was boring?
She meant she was bored, but what she actually wrote was, "I was causing boredom in everyone around me."
That is a very different thing to say about yourself.
And then in the same message, she wrote, "The film was watched by me and I loved it."
That is not wrong exactly, but nobody says it that way.
Nobody. And both of those sentences come from the same misunderstanding, the relationship between active and passive voice.
Which is exactly what today is about. And we have something a little different for you today.
Active and passive voice is one of the richest topics in English. It goes much deeper than most learners realize, so we have decided to split it into 2 parts.
In part 1, which is today, we cover the foundation. We explain what active and passive are, how passive is built across different tenses, and why native speakers choose passive, which is the part most learners have never been taught.
We also cover the ed and ing adjective distinction, which is exactly where my friend's mistake comes from.
In part 2, which comes tomorrow, we go deeper. We cover get passive, causative structures, reporting passives, passives with phrasal verbs, the 4 biggest mistakes, and a full role play where you will hear everything working naturally together.
Watch both parts and you will have a complete, thorough understanding of active and passive voice.
But before we get into it, please like and subscribe to Say It. Every new subscriber helps us make more episodes for you.
Let us start from the very beginning.
So, active and passive voice, and the best way to understand the relationship between them is to think of a camera.
A camera.
When a filmmaker shoots a scene, the same event can be filmed from completely different angles. The event does not change, but what you see, what you focus on, changes entirely depending on where the camera is pointing.
And active and passive work exactly the same way.
Exactly. Active and passive are not different meanings. They are different perspectives on the same event. The same thing happened, only the spotlight has moved.
Let us take one sentence and look at it from both angles. The police arrested the suspect.
Active. The camera is on the police. We see what they did. They are the subject. They performed the action.
Now, the suspect was arrested.
Passive. The camera has moved. Now it is on the suspect. We see what happened to them. They are the subject, but they did not perform the action. The action was performed on them.
Same night, same arrest, same event, but 2 completely different sentences.
And the structure changes too. In active, subject performs the action. Subject, verb, object. The police arrested the suspect.
In passive, subject receives the action. The subject is acted upon. The structure becomes subject, the right form of be, plus the past participle of the main verb.
The suspect was arrested. The subject is the suspect. Was is the form of be. Arrested is the past participle.
And sometimes the doer of the action can be added at the end, introduced by the word by. The suspect was arrested by the police.
But very often, that by phrase is dropped entirely, and we will talk about exactly when to drop it and when to keep it a little later.
Let us look at a few more examples so the camera angle idea really lands.
Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. Active. Camera on Shakespeare. He is the subject. He performed the writing.
Hamlet was written by Shakespeare. Passive. Camera on Hamlet. The play is the subject now. Shakespeare moves to the end.
Same fact, different spotlight. And notice, in the passive version, if we already know Shakespeare wrote Hamlet, we could drop his name entirely.
Hamlet was written in the early 1600s. No mention of Shakespeare. The play stays in focus. The writer is gone.
The storm destroyed the bridge. Active. The storm is the subject. The storm caused the damage.
The bridge was destroyed by the storm. Passive. The bridge is now the subject. The damage is what we focus on. The storm has moved to the end.
And in a news report, you might simply read, "The bridge was destroyed overnight. No storm mentioned. The bridge is all that matters."
Same event. 3 different sentences, 3 different camera angles.
And that is the key insight to carry through everything we teach today. Changing the voice does not change what happened. It changes what the sentence wants you to look at.
Now, before we talk about why native speakers choose one camera angle over the other, let us build the passive structure properly.
Because knowing how passive is formed is the foundation for everything else.
So the passive structure is always the same at its core.
The right form of be plus the past participle of the main verb.
That is all it is. But the form of be changes depending on the tense, and that is where learners sometimes get lost.
Let us go through the most important ones, starting with present simple. The company makes the product here.
Active, now passive. The product is made here. Is present simple of be, made past participle.
Past simple. The company made the product last year.
Passive, the product was made last year. Was past simple of be, made past participle. Same past participle, different form of be.
Future simple. The company will make the product next month.
Passive, the product will be made next month. Will be, future of be, made past participle.
Present perfect. Someone has stolen my wallet.
My wallet has been stolen. Has been, present perfect of be, stolen, past participle.
And that sentence, "My wallet has been stolen," is one of the most natural passive sentences in everyday English. Nobody says, "Someone stole my wallet," when they do not know who did it.
Because my wallet has been stolen puts the focus exactly where it belongs, on the wallet, on what happened, not on the unknown thief.
Now the continuous tenses, and this is where one of the most common errors happens.
The present continuous. They are building a new road.
Let's make it passive. A new road is being built. Is being built. 3 words. Is present simple of be, being present participle of be, built past participle.
And the critical rule, being can never be dropped. A new road is built. That is a state of passive. It describes a state. A new road is being built. That describes an action in progress right now.
2 completely different meanings from one word.
Past continuous. They were building a new road when the accident happened.
Passive. A new road was being built when the accident happened. Was being built. Being stays, always.
Now, modal passives. And these are extremely high frequency in professional and formal English.
The formula is simple. Modal, be, past participle.
This can be fixed. The form must be submitted. The decision might be delayed. The offer would be considered.
Can be fixed, must be submitted, might be delayed, would be considered. The modal stays exactly as it is. Be stays as be, and the past participle follows.
Now, the past participle, because this is where one of the most damaging errors happens.
The past participle is not the same as the past simple for irregular verbs.
The report is written, not wrote. The letter was sent, not sended. The decision was taken, not took. The contract has been signed.
Written, sent, taken, signed, those are past participles. Wrote, sended, took, those are either past simple forms or simply wrong.
In passive, it is always the past participle, every single time, no exceptions.
And the by phrase, when do you include it and when do you drop it?
Included when the agent, the doer, adds meaningful information. The theory was developed by Einstein. By Einstein is important. It is the surprising or significant fact.
Drop it when the agent is obvious. The road is being repaired by workers, obviously. Saying it adds nothing.
Drop it when the agent is unknown. My wallet has been stolen. I do not know by whom. There is nothing to add.
And sometimes drop it deliberately because not naming the agent is the entire point. But we are going to spend a lot of time on that later because the question of why native speakers choose passive and when is the most important thing we will teach today.
So we know what passive is. We know how it is built. But here is the question that almost no ESL course ever answers properly.
Which question?
Why do native speakers choose passive? What is actually going on when a native speaker reaches for passive instead of active?
Because passive is not random. Every time a native speaker uses passive, there is a reason, and there are 7 of them.
Reason 1. The agent is unknown. You genuinely do not know who performed the action.
My car was broken into last night. I do not know who did it. There is no agent to name.
A body was found near the river this morning. Found by whom? Unknown. The passive is not a choice here. It is the only natural option.
The window was smashed. Mistakes were made. When you do not know who did something, passive is where English goes naturally.
Reason 2, and this one is the most powerful of all 7, to deliberately hide the agent. The speaker knows exactly who performed the action, but chooses not to say.
Your application has been rejected. Softer than we rejected your application. The passive puts distance between the company and the decision.
The deadline was missed. That avoids saying you missed the deadline. The passive removes the accusation entirely.
It has been decided that the office will close. Who decided? Nobody says. The passive makes the decision feel inevitable, like it came from nowhere and everywhere at once.
And the most famous example of this in the English language, mistakes were made.
Attributed to multiple presidents over the years, nobody admits who made the mistakes. The passive does the political work. It acknowledges that something went wrong without identifying who was responsible.
And the contrast with active could not be more striking. We made a mistake and we take full responsibility. Active, direct, accountable.
Mistakes were made. Passive, vague, untraceable. Same event, completely different moral weight.
Reason 4, to maintain topic continuity. And this is the reason most language teachers never mention.
When you want the same subject to run through several connected sentences, passive keeps the spotlight in one place.
Without passive, the committee reviewed the proposal. The board then approved it. 2 different subjects, the reader has to shift focus twice.
With passive, the proposal was reviewed by the committee. It was then approved by the board. The proposal stays as the subject throughout. The paragraph flows.
Another example. Sarah applied for the job. She was interviewed on Monday. She was offered the position the following week.
Sarah stays as the subject of every sentence, even when other people are performing actions on her. The passive keeps her in the spotlight throughout.
This is why academic and formal writing uses passive so naturally. It maintains consistent topic threads without the reader ever losing the thread.
Passive use number 5, to place the most important information at the end. English naturally puts the heaviest, most significant information at the end of a sentence, where it lands with most impact.
Listen to this active sentence. A small team of 3 junior engineers who had only been with the company for 6 months completed the project.
The subject is enormous. Everything important is buried at the front. By the time you reach the verb, completed, you have almost forgotten what you are reading.
Now, the passive version. The project was completed by a small team of 3 junior engineers who had only been with the company for 6 months.
The project, given information, already known, comes first. The surprising agent, a small team of juniors, lands at the end where it hits hardest.
The award was won by the youngest competitor in the history of the competition. The surprising information arrives exactly where it should, at the end.
Reason 6. In academic and scientific writing. Passive is the standard voice in research papers, laboratory reports, and formal documentation because the focus is on the process and the result, not on the researcher.
The samples were collected between March and June. The data was analyzed using a double-blind method. The hypothesis was tested under controlled conditions.
Writing, "I collected the samples" would sound informal and personal in academic writing. Passive depersonalizes. It keeps the attention on the method and the findings.
Reason 7. In news and journalism. News focuses on what happened, and passive puts the event in the subject position where it belongs.
3 people were killed in the explosion. The suspect has been arrested. The deal was signed yesterday.
And news headlines take this even further. They drop the auxiliary be entirely. 3 killed in explosion. Suspect arrested after chase. Deal signed between leaders.
Those are passive sentences, but the was or have been has been removed completely to save space.
Learners who do not recognize this pattern often misread headlines as strange active sentences.
7 reasons, and every single time a native speaker chooses passive, at least one of those reasons is behind the choice.
So passive has 7 clear reasons behind it, but there is a question that comes up every time this topic is taught.
Which question?
If passive is so useful, why do so many writing guides tell you to avoid it?
Because active is generally more direct, more energetic, and easier to read. Fewer words for the same meaning. The reader immediately knows who is doing what.
The most famous version of this advice comes from George Orwell. He wrote, "Never use the passive where you can use the active."
And Orwell was right as a general preference, but even Orwell used passive when the situation called for it.
Because the rule is not never use passive. The rule is never use passive without a reason.
And that is the key insight. Passive is not a weakness. Using it without a reason is.
Think about the second sentence my friend wrote. The film was watched by me and I loved it.
Grammatically possible, but completely unnatural.
Because there is no reason for the passive there. She is the clear, natural subject. She watched the film. She loved it. Active is the only sensible choice.
I watched the film and I loved it. Shorter, clearer, more natural. Passive adds nothing there.
So the question to ask every time is there a reason I am choosing passive? Is the agent unknown? Am I deliberately omitting someone? Does topic continuity require it? Does the important information need to land at the end?
If yes to any of those, passive is the right choice.
If no, active is almost always stronger.
Passive is a tool, and like any tool, it works brilliantly when used for the right job, and badly when used for no reason at all.
Now, there is something about active and passive that goes beyond just structure and style. Sometimes the choice between them genuinely changes what the sentence implies.
The same event, but with a different meaning?
Not a different fact, but a different implication. Let us start with blame. You broke the vase.
Active. Direct. The blame lands squarely on the person.
The vase was broken.
Passive. Nobody is blamed. The vase is broken, but by whom? The sentence does not say.
Think about a child who has knocked something over. They will never say, I broke the vase. They will always say, the vase was broken.
Because the passive makes it sound like the vase broke itself.
Exactly. The passive does not lie, but it moves the responsibility somewhere much harder to find.
The same thing happens at a much larger scale. The government raised taxes, active, clearly responsible.
Taxes were raised, passive. The responsibility disappears into the sentence. Nobody raised them, they simply rose.
Now, intentionality. She left the door open.
Active implies a deliberate action. She is the subject. She did it.
The door was left open.
Passive removes intentionality entirely. Could have been anyone, could have been an accident. The passive spreads the responsibility so thin it vanishes.
And then there is formality and distance. We cannot offer you the position.
Active, direct, personal. It feels like a conversation between two people.
You have not been selected for the position.
Passive, more distant, more institutional. The rejection feels like it came from a system rather than from a person.
Both sentences say the same thing, but one feels human and the other feels like a form letter.
And that distance, that deliberate removal of the human behind the decision is one of the most powerful things passive can do in professional English.
Active and passive are the same camera angle pointed at the same event, but where the camera points and who it chooses to show changes everything about how the sentence feels.
And that idea, who performs the action and who receives it, brings us directly back to the message my friend sent at the beginning of today's episode.
I was so boring at that film.
She meant she was bored, but what she actually wrote was, I was causing boredom in everyone around me.
And the reason that error happens is rooted in exactly what we have been talking about all episode: active and passive, who causes and who receives.
When we add ed to a feeling verb, the person receives the feeling. The feeling is done to them. It is passive.
I am bored. The boredom arrived. Something caused it. I received it.
When we add ing, the thing or situation causes the feeling. It is active. It is producing the feeling in someone else.
The film is boring. The film is causing boredom. It is doing something to the people watching it.
So, I am bored means the feeling is inside me. The film is boring means the film is producing that feeling.
And I am boring means I am producing boredom in other people, which is a very different and rather unflattering thing to say about yourself.
Which is exactly what my friend said.
Unintentionally.
The test is simple. Does this word describe a feeling inside a person? Use ed. Does it describe a quality of a thing or a situation, something that produces a feeling? Use ing.
Let us go through the most important pairs: interested and interesting.
I am interested in this subject. The feeling is inside me. I received it. This subject is interesting. The subject produces the interest in others.
Excited and exciting.
I am excited about the trip. The excitement is inside me. The trip is exciting. The trip produces that excitement.
Tired and tiring.
I am tired after the journey. The tiredness is inside me. The journey was tiring. The journey produced the tiredness.
Confused and confusing.
I am confused by these instructions. The confusion is inside me. These instructions are confusing. They are producing the confusion.
Disappointed and disappointing.
I am disappointed with the result. The disappointment is inside me. The result was disappointing. The result produced that feeling.
Shocked and shocking.
I was shocked by the news. Shocked. The feeling is mine. The news was shocking. Shocking. The news caused it.
Embarrassed and embarrassing.
I was embarrassed by what happened. Embarrassed. The feeling is mine. The situation was embarrassing. The situation caused it.
Frustrated and frustrating.
I am frustrated with this process. Frustrated. The feeling is mine. This process is frustrating. It is producing the frustration.
And exhausted and exhausting.
I am exhausted after that meeting. Exhausted. The feeling is inside me. That meeting was exhausting. The meeting produced the exhaustion.
The same logic runs through every single pair. Amazed and amazing. Overwhelmed and overwhelming. Fascinated and fascinating. Motivated and motivating. Inspired and inspiring.
In every case, ed describes how a person feels. Ing describes what a thing or situation is like.
And the most common error, I was very boring at the party, means you spent the evening producing boredom in everyone around you.
What the speaker almost always means is, I was very bored at the party. They received it. Someone or something else produced it.
One letter, the difference between receiving a feeling and causing it in others. And now that you understand active and passive voice, that difference will never confuse you again.
And that is part 1 of our active and passive voice series. Let us bring everything together.
Active and passive are not different meanings. They are the same event seen from 2 different camera angles.
Active, the subject performs the action. The police arrested the suspect.
Passive, the subject receives the action. The right form of be plus the past participle. The suspect was arrested.
The past participle, not the past simple. The letter was sent, not sended. The decision was taken, not took.
And being can never be dropped in continuous passive. The road is being built, not the road is built. 2 completely different meanings.
The 7 reasons native speakers choose passive. The agent is unknown. The agent is obvious or unimportant. To deliberately hide the agent, the most powerful reason of all.
To maintain topic continuity, to place important information at the end, in academic and scientific writing.
And in news and journalism, including the truncated headline passive where the auxiliary be is dropped entirely.
Active is stronger when there is no reason for passive. Passive is the right choice when at least one of those 7 reasons applies.
The subtle meaning differences. Active takes responsibility. We made a mistake. Passive transfers it to nobody. Mistakes were made.
Active implies intentionality. Passive removes it. Active feels personal. Passive creates distance.
And the ed and ing distinction. Ed describes how a person feels. They receive the feeling. Ing describes what a thing or situation is like. It causes the feeling.
I am bored. The lesson is boring. Never, I am boring, unless you mean you cause boredom in other people.
Now your challenge. Think of something that happened recently. Write 2 sentences about it in the comments. 1 in active and 1 in passive.
And tell us, why did you choose passive for that sentence? Which of the 7 reasons applies?
We read every single comment, and we reply.
If part 1 helped you, please share it with one person who is learning English right now.
And if you are not subscribed to Say It Yet, please subscribe. If today's episode helped you, please give it a like. Every like helps more people find this episode.
Part 2 is coming tomorrow. Get passive, causative structures, reporting passives, passives with phrasal verbs, the 4 biggest mistakes, and a full role play.
Part 2 is where the teaching becomes truly complete. We will see you there tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.